Hello, everyone. Welcome back. As usual, your cameras, if you have a camera and you can turn on the camera, could be great. For today, people factors. We continue with this idea of talking about the importance of the people in the agile development. As today, you should be working in your homework, your project. Hopefully, all of you have a team. I answered some questions by email regarding the size of the team. Please, the size, the maximum is 5 people. So be sure that your team is maximum 5. We are 83 people in the class. So worst case scenario, you are in a team with 3 people, assuming that all the others are 5. So no more than 5. I am not going to allow any team to be more than 5. So 5 people, that is your team. If you still are searching for a team, please use the chat right now to ask for people to join your team, or use Canvas, post an announcement, search for people that work with you. Good? Good. Regarding the schedule, it is my understanding that the next week is the career fair. And I think, as usual, the career fair is the same day that one of our lectures. Usually people ask me to have the day free, even though our lecture is late. But something that I want to know is if you need the day free, I could be okay to give you the date. I'm not sure if it's Tuesday or Thursday, but if the career fair is one of those 2 days, one of the days that we have a lecture, I would prefer to give you the lecture free. I mean, give you the chance to focus on the career fair instead of having a lecture with a small number of people. The due date for assignment 3, something that I need to fix also. Thank you for mentioning that. The original date is 1 week, but something that I mentioned in the previous lecture is I am going to give you 10 days instead of a week. So I am going to add some days to that. So what about this? Your project originally was due the 15th. What I am going to do is to move your project to Friday 19. So your project, your assignment, I am going to change this on Canvas later, but let's think that the project can be due the 19th, that is Friday. So that is going to give you another full week to work. This week, some days, but at least you can have the next week, Monday to Friday, to submit and work in your project. I really want you to work as a team. I really want you to have the opportunity to apply the Agile process and have these meetings and do your review and your retrospective as that should happen. This is not a programming class. So I know that you can do the program. I know that you can deliver the product. My goal is for you to follow the process. So the project, I am going to move from the 15th to the 19th. That is going to be your due date. I am going to do that later. I need to post the videos, yes, also. And what about the lecture on the 16th? We cancel that. So we have a lecture today, and our next lecture can be the 18th. Good. So the 16th, you can focus on the career fair. That is fine. And you have work to do. Good?
Professor, I have a question about the assignment.
Yeah, please.
So I noticed on the screenshot of the previous lecture, the game of life has only a start button. But when you go online, it has a lot of other functionalities like resizable grid. There's like different speed for each generation, like the lexicon. Do we need to focus when implementing the game only on the start button, or do we need to implement everything that is on the website currently?
Okay, very good question. Let's do this. I am asking only for 2 functionalities. Number 1, the running the simulation. Well, number 1 is the user can put yellow boxes on the screen, right? You have this grid, the user can put the yellow one, the live elements, you have this bottom that is run, start the simulation. The second one that I am asking you to have is the stop simulation. So run and stop, or continue and stop, two of the options, only that ones. I know that in the web there are more than that. Let's use reduce your requirements to that. Is adding elements, the yellow ones, run the simulation, and having the option to stop and continue. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I am going to add that to the link in which you are going to submit, just to be sure that everyone is aware. Yeah, for the user stories, please make your user stories to match the requirements that I just mentioned. Is the game of life? The only thing that you can do is add elements, run the simulation, stop and continue the simulation. Yes, make your project be all in the same page. Requirements and the implementation, they match. Yeah. Do not add requirements that you are not implementing. Yeah, I am allowing you to submit PDF or docx. So yeah, you can use any format that you want. It's up to you. I need a grid. I asked you for a grid. The size of the grid, how many elements in the grid, up to you. You can define a number of rows and a number of columns, a good number, 100 by 100 if you want, or you can make that to increase the size according with the size of the screen. I give that option to you. Good. Okay, guys, so just to be sure, regarding our schedule, we do not have a lecture on the 16th. You are free to go to the career fair. I am going to post an announcement just to be sure that no one is here. I am going to share with you the exact submission items. There are in the slides from the previous lecture. They are in the video from the previous lecture. I need to post that, but you can check the slides and there is a list of things for you to submit. Important things. Number one, I want your product backlog, product or sprint backlog. I want this list of your items, the one that you use to do your planning. That is very, very important. I want the product and I want your retrospective and your review for your sprint. So those are the most important things, but I am going to post the announcement, the link for the submission with all the details. So you're going to have that. Good? Okay, so moving forward, guys, I need to be sure that we know that what you are doing right now, this first project that you are working, and trying to follow the agile process. This is the first time that I ask you to follow the process. Obviously, I want you to submit a good product, but the most important thing that I want to do is after you submit and after you complete this, to review your process. And I just want you to remember that when you are following the process, your goal is this one. Everything is about the customer. Something that I need you to remember, and this is a academic project. This is a project that you are doing in the school, but your mindset should be, if in any moment you have a question, you do not know what to do, the correct thing to do is to ask your customer, that in this case is your instructor, is me. Ask questions. Do not solve a problem. Use assuming things. This is something that we reviewed before. Assumption is a very bad idea. And usually what happens is students make assumptions and then complaints, appeals. Do not submit appeals, submit questions, please. It's a very important part, not only for the class or for the academic structure, but that is what should happen if you really are following Agile. Consider your customer, send an email asking questions, clarifying doubts, instead of waiting to submit appeals. So the customer is at the center. Moreover, your goal is to deliver software, working software. The common error that the people do, even in the first project or in the last one, is, as I mentioned before, we have everything. I have this part, my friend have the other part, my other friend have another part. We have everything, but we didn't have time to integrate everything. So the last day, in the last minute, you're going to send me an email with your part, and your friend is going to send another email with their part, and so on. Guys, we are going to grade only what you submit on Canvas. And we're going to grade only the submission of one people in the team. The TAs, the graders, they are not going to integrate your work. They are not going to consider, oh, this part here, that part there, and so on. If you have that, you didn't follow the process, you didn't work in the Agile way, and therefore your grade is going to be low. Again, the grade is not for a programming lab. It's all about the process. And the process is every single day, in every single moment, you have a piece of software that works, that do something. Maybe you do not complete all the requirements. Maybe your software miss some particular feature. You can run, but you cannot stop. But your software is working. And that is something that we're going to grade. Professor, we have everything. Why we receive this 80 or 70? Because of the process. This class is all about the process. Yes, we need your software to compile and run, but that is just one small part. The important part, the one that have more impact in your grade, is following the process, and therefore having this working software in every single moment. So consider that when you're planning things with your team. Obviously, there are a lot of things involved. As you can notice, is a lot of motivation things. Just to summarize, it's all about motivation. It's all about being able to organize by yourself. It's all about to have conversational skills, communication skills. Obviously, the technical part, I cannot do anything regarding your skills for, working with the people. However, I can do something with the technical part. And something that I want to review today is a little bit of the technical part that can help you to work together with others. Hopefully you have the skills to communicate with others. Hopefully you have somehow the skills to solve issues with your friends. I allow you to select your team. So hopefully the people that you select is people that you can work and communicate and fix issues easily. I am not going to move in that direction, but I want to talk today about technical things that can help or support working with others. So that is for today. I am going to mention that, patterns. If you have the skills, if your team have the skills of knowing patterns, knowing MVC, my advice is go ahead and use your skills. I mean, you know it, use it. But obviously, I am not assuming that you have those skills. So in my grading, I am not going to grade that good design just because this class is not about software design. I am teaching that in another class. I cannot assume that you have the skills for that. However, if you have those skills, please use your skills. Showcase, show me your best skills to develop software. Well, setting up the GitHub repository is something that usually you do as a team, and is not a story or is not something that you put in the product backlog. You can add that as a technical task. However, the assumption is that is something that you as a company or even you as a team do for any project. It's not kind of something special for one particular project. So yes, you can add it. Yes, it's a technical task. However, usually it's something kind of natural. It's the same that install my integrated developer environment. It's something that maybe you already have, or if you are going to do it, it's not because the project, but it's just because something that every developer do. Yeah. The detail for the product backlog is just the details that impact the project, things that you do for the project. That is kind of the detail. What I want to do is to review with you whatever you submit. So if some of you submit like those questions in the chat, it may be something that later I am going to put in a slide and I am going to review with you. So my advice, do not put that. Good. Okay, so thinking about the people and thinking about what I am going to talk right now, this is all the factors that you need to consider when you work with people, when you work with Agile. And some of them, very subjective, like we mentioned before, motivation, other things. The only thing that is related with people factors, and we can review from a software developer point of view, is the skills that are related with your knowledge of software developing. In particular, these two. Skills. When I think about your skills as a software developers, and when I think about the skills that are important for you to be able to work in an Agile team, there are two things. Simplicity and technical excellence. What are you talking about? I am talking about the following. You're going to create software. When you create software, what you're doing is writing something. You are using a particular language, you are using particular libraries, I don't care. You are writing a document. And there are two ways to create a document. Number one is I want to create this document, and my goal is that everyone can read and understand the document. I want my readers to be able to understand what I am sharing. The other is I am going to create this document, and I am going to make this document as complex as possible because I do not want anyone that read this to understand. Can you imagine a developer in these scenarios? The first scenario is I really want to share my knowledge. I really want to work with others. The second scenario, I want to make my program to be complex to read just because I want the people to think that I am doing very complex things. Can you imagine how to achieve this and how to achieve this? Can you imagine different techniques that you can follow in order to make your software, your source code, easy or hard to read? I am sure that all of you have created programs, softwares, and there are some things that we can do to make our software hard to read, hard to understand. There are things that we can do to make it easy to read. In Agile, what we want is to make our thing easy to read. This idea of make things to look complex just because that shows that I am a very good programmer, theoretically at least, do not work, do not match with the Agile philosophy. simplicity. Let me be clear. Easy to read, easy to understand. That doesn't mean that you cannot use complex techniques or complex algorithms. We are not limiting your capability of using complex solution or propose complex solution. What we're talking here is, even though your solution is complex, can you make that solution easy to understand for others? Can you not only solve the problem, but be worried about others reading what you are writing? Key idea number one. Key idea number two. Always, 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 for any problem, there are two solutions. The solution for the new programmer, the solution with the for loop and the if else, and some other solution that is a little bit more complex than that, a little bit more elaborated, but better. Better in performance or better in elegance in terms of programming. You can identify a programmer according with some source code. Is a person that is writing something naive or not? Technical knowledge, simplicity. Even though they could look like contradictory, they can work together. Something that I would like to ask you in your project, consider these two elements: simplicity and technical excellence. And right now you can be thinking like, okay, that is a very high level theoretical concept. How do I know what is simple and how do I know what is technically excellent? Well, the best case scenario is I need to show you examples. What we want to avoid is something like this picture. The source code that I am going to show you in the next slide represent the same idea that this picture. You can create a solution for a piece of software. You can complete your project, and your project could be something technically good and simple, or can be something like the picture. And the picture is basically representing something that is technically wrong, technically unstable, but moreover, it is not particularly simple. A lot of different materials that could represent a lot of different libraries, a lot of different patterns or ideas used to create something that should be straightforward. I mentioned the ideas, I show you the picture, and I am sure that you're thinking like, yeah, okay, makes sense the idea, okay, makes sense the picture, but how is that related with source code? Source code. What I am going to show you is ideas that you can find in this book. If you are planning to continue your career in software developing, software engineers, I highly recommend you to read the book. I am not going to talk about all the elements in the book, but what we're going to be reviewing this week, probably the next one, are concepts that are described in detail in this book. So if you have the opportunity, highly recommend it. It's a good lecture for you. So regarding this book and regarding technical excellence and simplicity, 3 key ideas. Number one, your source code should be easy to read. Number two, your source code should be easy to extend. Your source code should be easy to test. It's kind of obvious. It's something that you want since you learn 110, since you learn to program. Okay, good. To be clear, even though this looks like very trivial, something that the people usually do not understand is the following. You can deliver your project, the assignment, next week, or you can deliver any other project in any other class or even in the industry, and your project can work. You can implement the functionalities, the functional requirements, but that doesn't mean that your source code is good source code. That doesn't mean that you have the technical skills to be able to make your code easy to read, easy to test, and easy to extend or modify. Anything can work. You can finish your project, and that doesn't mean that you receive full credits, because finishing the project is just showing that you're programmers, not engineers. Anyone can do programming. We are teaching kids in the high school to do coding. The important thing for you guys to know is what is coding, what is programming, engineering. When you think about coding, it's just about making something to work, make the program to solve the functionality. If you're thinking as an engineer, if you're thinking even as a programmer, these are key ideas. This is what shows that you have technical skills beyond a high school kid. It's not about just making the software work. It's about making that solution having a good quality. And three things that we're going to review in your project, answering the question in the chat, is, okay, by default, we're expecting that your project work and compile and run and do every functionality that we're asking for. But the important part is, okay, work, moving to the next level. If I open your source code, is easy to read, is extensible, is easy to test. And that is a different story. Now, why? Why I am so worried about these technicalities? Guys, I don't know if you are aware of this, but if you are going to develop software, 10-1, you're going to write code. It's important that you know the language. You are going to be writing sentences and instructions and methods and classes. Yeah. But you're going to use 10 times more effort. 10 hours reading for 1 hour writing. When you create software, most of the time you are reading what other people do. And I am talking about your teammates or a library that you are using from some other place before you start writing your code. You're going to do your application with the game of life. I am sure that you're going to spend time reading Java Swing, learning how to do the grid, the yellow rectangles, running the rules. You're going to need a timer or a thread to run the rules. All of that is about using libraries, the source code that someone else creates. Maybe not the source code, the API, reading before writing. You're going to work in a team. Hopefully, you split the work and someone in your team is going to do the view, like you mentioned before, model view controller. Hopefully someone in your team is going to do the view. Hopefully someone else is going to deal with the controller, the listeners, the events. and someone else can work in programming the rules for the game of life. There is a lot of opportunity there for doing a model. There are a lot of rules that you need to program, a lot of conditions depending of, the neighbors that one particular cell in the grid have. It could be a very good idea to use MVC if you are aware of what I am talking about, MVC. In any way, reading is a lot of effort. So I cannot do anything regarding the time that you are going to use reading. However, whatever you are going to write, you can do something to make sure that those things that you are writing, those source code that you are creating, is going to be easy to read for others. Probably not this assignment. Probably no one is going to read your game of life except your team and the TA and myself. But it's just your opportunity to show that you can create software, lines of code that are easy to read. Easy to read. Okay. Talking about easy to read. There is an important thing connected with easy to read. You know what? You are working with Agile. Agile is an iterative process. You are working in something in one sprint, next sprint, you are adding more things, more things, more things. Each sprint gives you the opportunity to change or add things. Just by default, in any process that is iterative, your productivity go down. It doesn't matter what you do. The only thing that you can change is the inclination of the curve. But whatever process, whatever software is done with iterations, whatever software is done with this agile approach is going to die in some point. In some point, it's going to be impossible to continue the maintenance. You cannot do this. If you think about the operating systems, any operating system, Windows, Mac, whatever, any app, website, in some point, after some period of time, the people is going to tell you, you know what? Our new operating system, our new app, our new web, we are moving to redesign everything from scratch. We are doing something completely new. What they are telling you is we reach the point in which we cannot improve what we have anymore. It's not something that we do because we want to create a new product fresh. It's something that we do because this happened. The productivity go down. In some point, there are so many things in the software that is cheaper to start from scratch and redo things that continue the modification or the extension of the software. But again, our goal is to make this line and this point as long as possible. Provide the software with the longest period of life. How do we do that? Making easy to read, easy to test, easy to extend. There is a reason, an economical reason. Okay, so good. How do we do that? Okay, let me start with three things. Three things that I want to review with you today, and I hope that you apply to your assignment. Number one, the easy one. Follow the guidelines. You're programming with Java, please follow the Java guidelines. If you follow the Java guidelines, your program is going to be easy to read. Help me, can you give me an example of one of the guidelines for programming with Java? Examples, guidelines of programming with Java. Any idea? Java. The names, okay. I like that one. So you are aware. If you are completely unaware of what I am talking about with the coding guidelines, you can ask Google Java guidelines, and in fact, it's going to give you a web page, and that web page is from Google, and it's a list of the things that you should consider when you program in Java. And those things include what you just mentioned. Please, you are a programmer. You are working with Java. Please add Java doc to your program. Please remember the name of the class is with uppercase. Please remember the name of a method is lowercase. Please remember your variables, lowercase. Please, the name of the method is an action. The name of the class is a subject, a noun, and so on. When you follow that lines, and I am just mentioning two, what you are doing is making your program easy to read, because I am not going to read a verb as the name of the class, because the classes are not actions. I am going to read verbs as a name of the methods. The methods are action tasks. Coding guidelines. I am not asking for unit testing. Unit testing could be a good idea. I am not asking for that. Moreover, unit testing is not yet part of the readability. It's going to be part of the technical skills, but I am not going to mention today unit testing, not yet. So my answer to the question, unit testing for your project, no, is not mandatory. You can go ahead and add that, but not mandatory. It's not part of readability. So that is the reason. So coding guidelines. Hopefully you know it. I am going to evaluate that you know it. If you are unaware of what I am talking about with Java coding guidelines, please, homework, go and review, because it's something that we're going to grade in your project, and it's something that I am going to ask in your exam. Yes, it's something that I am not teaching you here, but I am assuming that you have background programming, and I am assuming that you have background with coding guidelines. If not, at this point, I am asking you, please go and review the guidelines for programming with Java, because you are going to have questions about it. Good? Okay, now that is the easy part. Next, I want to talk about these two. We're going to be talking about keys and dry. When I review your source code, when the TA review your source code, something that we're going to be doing is check if your source code is keys and dry. Do you remember? Invest for user stories, deep for the product backlog. Now we're talking about source code, and we're talking about keys and dry. Keys and dry. Very simple. Keys, keep it simple. Keep your source code simple. Easy to read, remember. Dry. Do not repeat yourselves. You are reading this, and I am sure that you're thinking like, they are kind of related. Yeah, if you are going to keep it simple, please do not repeat yourself. It's something that kind of makes sense, is related. It's very easy, right? I mean, how hard could it be that you keep your source code simple? How hard could it be that you do not repeat things in your source code? From a theoretical point of view, what I am asking you here, and the concept that I am sharing with you is like, those are trivials. Anyone can do that. Oh, that is the theoretical point of view. Let's review. Number one, I am going to use projects from your classmates, people that take this class previously. Maybe these are going to be the slides showing your assignment, the one that you're working right now, the next year. I am asking to use keys and dry. Help me. These projects follow the keys and the dry? Yes, no, why? Example number one, what do you think about the things inside of the red rectangle. Keys, drive, and the guidelines for Java. 3 things that I want you to follow for your project, 3 things that we're evaluating in these examples. Guidelines, keys, and drive. What do you think about this example? Guidelines, correct or not? Question in your exam, this picture, this example is following the guidelines of programming with Java, yes or no? I am going to talk about keys, but guidelines. Can we agree that there is a mistake with the guidelines? Can we agree that according with the Java guidelines, you do not put comments above the packages? Can you agree with me, and is something that you know or something that you can review, that the comments go above the class or above the methods? Those are the Java documentations, the Java doc. You do not put the comments above the packages. Moreover, there is no reason for having one above the packages and one above the class. Something is wrong there according with the guidelines. Good. Second, can you agree with me also that all this space there, really, are you going to review spaces? It's part of the guideline, right? According with the guidelines, you only put one space, just because one space makes things easy to read. If I am going to read this, 2 problems. Number 1, there is a lot of space here. Number 2, if I print this, well, usually this line here is what is going to be printed in one page. So I have an issue with those lines because those lines probably are going to be lost in the printing. Those are the guidelines, guys. Sorry. And moving forward with this idea of simplicity, do you think that this is simple? Can you think that that explanation is easy to read, help you to read? And my question here is, what do you think could be a good comment? A good explanation for your class, a good explanation for your method? Could you create something as long as this? Moreover, are you going to mention this that is exactly what you have here? I mean, are you going to tell that this is inheriting from the JPanel, or this is some related with JPanel, when that is something that you can read below in the extent? Review the guidelines, review the Java doc, and the comments are there to help you to understand better the program. The goal is not that the comments repeat the same thing that I can read below in the source code. That is not the goal for the comments. This comment is going to go to a web page. There is no rule for how long or short it should be, but someone mentioned in the chat that paragraph is kind of something not exactly perfect, and I could agree with that without going into the details. But for the details, be careful with these lines out of the 80 characters, and be careful with this position of the comment. The comment, this should not be there. Okay, number 1. Number 2. What do you think in this same example about these variables here? I am reviewing the readability of this submission like it could be yours. What do you think about the names of the variables? Good, bad, so, bad. I agree with you with the bad. Why they are bad? Why you are going to take off points for the readability of this source code? Fully agree. As you mentioned in the chat, guys, your variables should have some kind of description of what is happening. If you use variables like label, and label one is like and, you can provide better names. Now, usually something that the student asks me, professor, what about the variable int e? Or what about the variable x and y? Or what about a variable student s? They are wrong also? Yes or no? They are good or bad? Okay, let me tell you this. There is not a good or bad that is always the correct answer. The answer here is depending on the context. Yes, depending on the context. A variable I, that is a global attribute in a class. If I could use I as an attribute in a class, probably I could tell you that is wrong as an attribute because it's not describing anything. But if I use that variable int I in a loop, as someone mentioned in the chat, that is very common. If I read I or J, those are the index for doing a traversal in an array or in a matrix. So if I have that one inside of a for loop or the other one, that is perfectly fine. Moreover, it's easy to read because the people is aware. The people is used to read those like the index of the elements in a two-dimensional array or one-dimensional array matrix operations. If you read an equation, the equation is going to have I and J. That is perfectly fine in the context of a loop, in the context of a traversal. If you use the same for an attribute, different story. Something that you need to consider is the context. It's not good or bad just because the name is I. Is okay, the name is I, but in which context? A global variable in a class, whatever. There is some reason because I am using that one. And if the answer is no, probably you need to change the name. Use like this label, label one. It's like, what is the meaning of that? But if you are in a loop, it's like, perfect. It's an index. And it's the index for the columns or for the rows, I or J. Similar with X and Y. What do you think about the variable, X and Y? And I use float, but it could be any numeric value, X and Y. Is a good or a bad name for a variable, X and Y? Can you agree with a similar definition that before? It's like, what if, exactly that. What if we're talking about coordinates? What if we're talking about something in the screen that is going to be moving? The Pac-Man in the Pac-Man video game. If I create a class Pac-Man and I put two attributes and one attribute is X and the other attribute is Y, it's perfectly fine. It's X and Y coordinates of the Pac-Man or X and Y coordinates of whatever graphical element I am creating in a game or whatever software you are doing. In your project, you are adding these yellow boxes. Probably those yellow boxes, you are going to call it a cell, a live item or whatever. And if you create a class for them, probably they are going to have attributes X and Y that is the position in the array of that guy. The name is good in that context. In a different context, if we're talking about professor and we create a professor X and a professor Y, probably could be a better idea to put Professor John and Professor Javier or whatever. Professors, probably a long name, but X and Y coordinates. A and J, iteration in loops. The context is important. Your goal is to make easy for the people to understand what you're doing. Consider the context. What do you think about student S? And that is tricky. Imagine that I do a main, and in the main, I am creating an object from a class student, and I just give you student S. Two points of view. Point of view number one, and again with the context. What if I am doing a main, and the main is used for testing my class student? I do not really care about the student. The only thing that I am doing is an object from the class student in order to test some of the methods. Is a student S? What do you think about exception E? What do you think about EO exception EOE? I am sure that you have read this in the tutorials. What does it mean when you put a name S to a student? What does it mean when you put a name E to exception? What does it mean when you put a name IOE to a EO exception? What is the meaning of using that? Is it easy to read or not? Ideas. Hopefully you have read tutorials online about Java. In particular, probably you have read tutorials in the official web page of Java, the Oracle web page. Probably you have read that these guys in the tutorials, the official one, use those variables. Guys, if you are doing a piece of software, if you are developing something like students for the university, professors for the university, a big system, it makes sense to put a name that is more appropriate. Professor, again, John, Professor Mary, Professor Javier, Professor whatever, a student, name for the students. But if you are working, use testing something. If you are programming an equation, if you have a variable that you are not going to use for anything, that you just need the variable because a particular space in your software, like happens several times with deceptions. Those names are easy to read. Sometimes those names, even though they are 3 letters or whatever, they make sense in the context. When I read an exception and I read that the name is E, what I am reading is, okay, this is an exception and no one cares about the exception. It is not important to give a proper name because that exception is not going to be used only in this line and in the next one. Exception E, E dot print stack. No one cares about the name. Using that kind of names, you're telling the reader, this name is not important. It's just someone, somebody, anyone. That is the idea with these names. That is what you want to do, could be correct. That is not what you want to do. You are making a mistake. Good? Okay. So, names. Here, what do you think about 2627 in this source code? Two things there. What is the problem? I agree with that. The idea when I read this, and I am not aware of the full program, not really, but looks like the idea of 2627 is to create constants. What is missing in the source code to create them as constants? Okay. Uppercase, good, final. When you read 2627, it's like, okay, the idea is good. Creating constants is a good practice, check. However, your idea is not correctly implemented. The names should be uppercase, as you mentioned. You need the final, the equivalent to the const. Static is good, but you create the idea, you have a good idea, but you do not implement the idea complete. Easy to read, technically competent. Okay, moving forward, what do you think about the things that I put inside of the red box? I am talking about the comments, basically. Exactly. Two things, guys. Can you agree with me that this comment is not in the correct place? The correct place for the comment, the java.comment, is outside of the method. But probably the most important thing that I want to show you here is this. Do you think that you need a comment with a comment? It's not the java.comment. It's a comment in the source code to tell the people constructors were something. Do you need to tell in a comment that this is a constructor? Hopefully everyone agree with the note that I have in the chat. It's no. Yes. Do you remember this idea of do not repeat yourself? Again, if I go back to the slide and I tell you do not repeat yourself, sounds like, yeah, obviously, who is going to repeat things? This programmer is repeating things. You're telling me that this is a constructor and that is something that anyone can read. It's the same name of the class, the same name of the method, and that means a constructor. And we are a team of technically competent people, so you do not need to tell me that this is a constructor. Why this is bad? Think about reading a book and the people that write the sentence is asking you to read things that are not necessary to read. Your brain become bored. And in some point, I am going to stop reading this because I am going to think this is bored. I do not need to read all this. I am going to skip lines. It's not me, it's every single person. The variable, yeah, I do not mention the variable, something that we mentioned before, but it is true. The variables need to change. This comment need to be moved. This comment need to be deleted. So hopefully you get the idea. And obviously everything here, when you read label equal to something, label one equal to something, label set font, add label, your brain become crazy because you're working with labels and your brain is asking you, what is going to happen with this label? What is this? Where this is going to be? Why this is important? You do not get an easy answer, and that made this not easy to read. Good. So hopefully it's clear, not dry, a problem with dry. Moreover, what do you think about this one? And in particular, related with something called flag. Hopefully you agree with me that yes, in the comments, in the java.comments for a method, something that you add is this label add parameter. And yes, you put the name of your parameter. And then exactly the description. By default, your IDE is going to give you something like this. By default, your IDE is going to put this. tell me what is the goal of that parameter. Two options. Help me with the name. Okay, it's a flag. Tell me what are the possible values for the flag. Is a flag that is going to be 0 and 1? Okay, help me to understand what happens if I put a 1 or a 0, or which other values are possible. This is the place in which I am looking for that information. Again, you are reading this. I could ask you to reuse this code. That line, 51, is the line in which you are looking for that information. If the information is not there, even though it's in the lines above, it's not easy to read. Okay. Moving forward, what do you think about the red rectangle there from 53 to 85? Thank you. Yeah. Can you agree with me that this is just too many spaces? Because again, think about it. You're going to print this. For some reason, you need to print it. For some reason, you're going to read this. This is the only important information that I have. Having all this space here is used a lot. Be smart with your indentations. If you're going to have a method and those methods have a cyclomatic complexity that is close to 10, I mean, you're going to have several different levels. Just be careful that your indentations are 2 instead of 4. And if you're going to use 4, good, but do not put twice that size for some of the things. Be careful with your indentations. Indentations have as a goal to make the code easy to read, not the opposite. And in this example, believe me, this is not easy to read. Okay. What do you think about line 70, the one inside of the red box? Tricky one. What do you think? Again, we're measuring here easy to read. Can you tell me if 70 is easy to read? Moreover, if it's not easy to read, what can we do to improve the readability there? Exactly. Guys, just think as a reader. I am reading this and my brain, just like yours, is asking, what color is the 171.216? What is that color? Your brain is going to ask for that. Usually, these kind of scenarios, the correct thing to do is to create a color, put a name for the color, give values to the color, and use here the name. I am not sure if that is the color, but the point is, if you create a color, if you give a name for the color, and then you apply the color, the reader is going to understand two important things. Okay, those are the numbers, the RGB for the maroon color. And you are going to apply the maroon color from this point below. Yes, it's one more line. It's easy to read and to know what you are doing. That could be another option, adding the comment. In general, and this is something that we can argue about it, in general, the recommendation, if you can make the code speak by itself, if you can avoid a comment, that is a better solution. So this is something that is arguable, but the solution with 2 lines of code could be more recommended than the solution with 1 line and the comment. Yeah, similar idea with Michael. It is better for the code to explain itself instead of adding a comment. It is not about practice, but it's something that is the last resource. Again, if you can achieve that the code explain itself, that is better. The last option in your toolbox is to add a comment. Again, it's not like adding the comment is bad, but just be sure that the reason of the comment being there is because really you need to put the comment there. In this example, as you mentioned, I think that we can create these 2 lines, create the color, give the color a name, and then use that name. And with that, we do not need a comment. I will recommend that option instead of adding the comment. Good. Okay. Keys, keep it simple. Dry, do not repeat. Moving forward, what do you think about that box in the line 86? And at this point, I am hoping that all of you agree that that is wrong, right? Thank you. I mean, guys, if I am reading or your reader is reading, catch, exception, do not tell me in a comment that there is an exception there. It's just, it is not dry, but that is talking about your technical skills. That is talking about who you are as a developer. Do not put this. I know I am asking you to add Java.co comments in your code, but when an instructor or your team leader asks you for comments, the instruction is put comments when those comments are needed. Show me that you have the common sense to identify in which places those comments are needed. Do not just add comments in any place to show me that you know that a comment starts with those characters. So be smart with this, both outside and for the class. Good. So moving forward, what do you think about this comment? Is source code that is, line 90 and discontinue. Something that I need you to be aware of. Never, never, never submit a project for review with some source code commented. If you are going to submit for review, like your project, to the TA for evaluation, delete source code like this that is not part of your project. Remove. Exactly. Well, another part of the technical things is you have a story in the GitHub, assuming that you are using GitHub, but if you need to have a copy in your local computer because you are not using GitHub, that is fine, but the one that you submit, delete. This is not dry. It's like, I have 10 lines of code here, garbage. Well, I am going to stop here. We're going to continue reviewing examples next lecture. Again, probably it's going to be just one day before you submit your project. One of the things that I need you to do is in your project, please apply the Java guidelines, dry, and keys. I am going to post the slides so you can review the other examples. And I think you can notice that I am adding these red rectangles in places in which I want you to notice something that is an error, something that I am expecting you do not do in your projects. Good? Okay, someone is searching for a team. Okay, guys, so I am stopping here. I am going to post some announcements later. See you next week. Thank you.